Part 3: The Human Factor. Chapter 5: The Psychology of Detachment: Why Good People Stop Feeling. 1. The honest beginning. Almost everyone who enters public service does so for good reasons. The young policy analyst wants to make schools fairer. The municipal officer dreams of cleaner neighborhoods. Even the politician once believed a law could make life better. Yet within a few years, something happens. The same people who began with conviction now speak in risk matrices, not in human stories. They talk about stakeholders instead of neighbors, optics instead of outcomes. It isn't that they stopped caring, it's that caring hurts too much in a system that rarely rewards it. This is ethical fatigue, the quiet erosion of empathy under the weight of procedure. 2. The empathy erosion curve. Psychologists studying professions with chronic moral stress, medicine, law enforcement, social work, observe a pattern called the empathy erosion curve. In the first years, emotional engagement is high. By mid-career, exposure to suffering without resolution breeds detachment. In politics and bureaucracy, the curve is steepened by an additional toxin, impotence. When decision-makers face human pain they can't directly fix, the brain defends itself by dulling feeling. What looks like indifference is often self-preservation. 3. The shield of abstraction. Abstraction is the bureaucracy's favorite sedative. A spreadsheet of 1-200 households affected spares the mind from 1-200 faces. Acronyms like KPI, ROI, FTE transform people into metrics. Language becomes armor. Neuroscientist Tanya Singer notes that empathy triggers pain centers in the brain. Distance, physical or linguistic, reduces that pain. Institutions seeking efficiency unconsciously codify distance. The result: policy written to minimize discomfort for the decision maker, not the citizen. 4. A hierarchy and the numbing of conscience. In any hierarchy, responsibility diffuses upward while accountability trickles downward. Milgram's famous obedience experiments showed how ordinary people inflict harm when authority absolves them. The more complex the chain of command, the easier it is to hide moral cost in paperwork. A mid-level official can say, "I was following protocol." A minister can say, "I was following advice." No one feels like the author of suffering. Systems don't feel shame, people do. So people learn not to feel. 5. The stress response of power. Power doesn't merely corrupt, it changes chemistry. Studies at the University of California found that individuals in positions of authority show reduced mirror neuron activation, the neural mechanism for empathy. Constant stress floods the body with cortisol, narrowing emotional bandwidth. Leaders learn to suppress empathy to maintain composure under scrutiny. Over years, suppression becomes habit. The thick skin, celebrated in politics, is physiologically real and psychologically costly. 6. The culture of cynical professionalism. Inside institutions, cynicism masquerades as competence. The rookie who shows moral outrage is told, "You'll learn." Passion is reclassified as naivete, irony as maturity. Meetings reward detachment because it signals control. The more emotionally fluent an employee, the more unserious they appear. Thus empathy, the trait that should guide policy, becomes a career liability. 7. The moral disengagement toolkit. Albert Bandura identified mechanisms of moral disengagement, mental tricks that let good people do harmful things. Euphemistic labeling, calling layoffs, right-sizing. Displacement of responsibility, head office decided. Diffusion of responsibility, everyone signed off. Minimizing consequences, it's just numbers on a page. Dehumanization, these aren't citizens, they're clients. Institutions automate these defenses. They become standard operating procedure. 8. A compassion collapse. Empathy isn't infinite. Researchers call the brain's saturation point compassion collapse. Beyond a certain scale, emotion shuts down. One refugee's story moves millions, a million refugees become statistics. Bureaucracies operate permanently beyond that threshold. The solution isn't to demand endless empathy, it's to design systems that translate feeling into feasible action before numbness sets in. 9. Keeping the heart in the system. Rehumanizing institutions requires structure, not sermons. Story loops. Every policy proposal must include first-person testimonies from those affected. Rotation programs. Executives spend part of each year in frontline roles. Empathy audits. Regular surveys assessing perceived compassion in decision-making. Reflective practice. Scheduled sessions where staff discuss ethical tensions, not just technical hurdles. Hospitals that adopted similar practices saw burnout drop by 30%. Government could learn the same medicine. 10. Leadership by vulnerability. The most trusted leaders are those who allow emotion without losing reason. New Zealand's Jacinda Ardern popularized the phrase strength and kindness, a reminder that empathy and authority are not opposites. Neuroscience supports her. Compassion broadens cognitive flexibility, improving judgment under pressure. A culture that rewards vulnerability attracts integrity, one that mocks it breeds performance. 11. The citizen's role. Detachment isn't confined to elites. Voters, too, protect themselves from disappointment by disengaging. Every cynical joke about politicians all being the same releases us from the burden of caring. Collective apathy mirrors institutional numbness. Reconnection begins when citizens practice the empathy they demand, listening before judging, staying informed after the scandal fades. Empathy must flow both directions or it dries up everywhere. 12. A closing reflection. Power dulls empathy not because power is evil, but because feeling is fragile. Systems mistake numbness for professionalism, forgetting that compassion is the first data a democracy should process. The antidote is not more outrage, it's deliberate rehumanization, designing meetings, metrics, and media that keep faces visible and hearts responsive. If institutions could feel again, they might finally remember why they exist. End of Chapter 5. The Psychology of Detachment, Why Good People Stop Feeling. That chapter analyzed how news cycles, social media, and donor economies turn politics into entertainment, and what reforms could return attention to substance. This next chapter marks the book's turning point, where we move from critique to construction, from why the system fails to how to rebuild it so honesty works as well as deceit once did. Part 4. The Architecture of Reform. Chapter 7. The Ethical Infrastructure Building Systems That Make Honesty Work. One of the problem with relying on virtue. Most societies still treat ethics as a matter of character. If only we could elect better people, the system would behave better. But integrity collapses when it's left to personality alone. The economist Elinor Ostrom, who studied commons governance, proved that systems thrive when rules